My name is Madison Blake. I'm 41 years old, and last night at our 20-year high school reunion, my former classmates laughed at me. They assumed I had failed, that I had dropped out, probably gotten divorced, gone bankrupt, or was still working some admin job in the middle of nowhere. They didn't know the truth. They had no idea that the woman they just brushed off was a lieutenant general in the United States Army who had commanded an entire division in conflict zones they couldn't even pronounce. They didn't know until the sky began to tremble. The lights hit, and a black military helicopter descended onto the reunion lawn. A uniformed officer stepped out, walked past the stunned crowd, and saluted me. "Lieutenant General Blake, ma'am, we needs you." And in that moment, every whisper stopped. Every doubt collapsed. And I didn't have to say a word. And before I take you through what happened next, let me ask, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below so I know how far this story reaches. And if you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Now, let me tell you how it all started. I got to the Belmont Country Club a little early, not because I planned it that way, but because I needed a moment to catch my breath before stepping into a room full of faces I hadn't seen in 20 years. It was like walking into a time capsule, one I wasn't sure I wanted to open. I handed my keys to the valet, and he barely glanced at me, just slipped me a ticket like I was some +1 tagging along. I mumbled a quiet thank you, but his eyes were already scanning the lot for someone who mattered more. The club hadn't changed a bit. Still polished to a shine, lights too bright. Proud as ever, like it was trying to prove something. It was the kind of place where reputation trumped heart every time. Inside, the foyer was buzzing, laughter bouncing off the marble floors. Not the warm, pull-up-a-chair kind of laughter, but the kind that makes you feel like you've been gone too long to belong. At the check-in table, 3 women in matching red blazers sat behind a long white tablecloth, their reunion committee badges gleaming. I didn't know them, and they sure didn't know me. One flashed a polite smile and asked for my name. "Madison Blake," I said. She blinked, like the name didn't ring a bell. "Could you spell that?" she asked. I did, Blake, and watched her scan the list with fingers moving slower than they should have. Finally, she dug out a name tag. Cheap, handwritten in marker. Just my name. No lieutenant general, no keynote guest, not even a proper sticker. I pinned it to my chest, and it felt like pinning on a scar. "Welcome back," she said, her voice flat, already moving on to the next person. I stepped into the main hall where folks were mingling, champagne flutes in hand, air kissing, and tossing out compliments they didn't mean. Photo boards lined the room, propped up on easels, old snapshots of prom, football games, drama club. I stopped at one, a picture of the debate team staring back at me. Everyone's name was neatly printed below their faces. Everyone except mine. Where I'd stood, there was just an empty space, like I'd been cropped out of the memory altogether. I kept walking. Near the ballroom entrance, a woman in a green silk gown nudged her friend, pointing at me. Wasn't she the cello player? Or maybe the library girl? She whispered. Her friend shook her head. "No, that's not her. I think she left sophomore year. Probably didn't even graduate with us. Maybe she's someone's date." They didn't wait for me to set them straight, just drifted off into the crowd. I stood there, letting their words settle, that quiet ache hitting me. The kind you feel when folks erase you while you're standing right there. Then I moved toward the name display wall. Big gold letters spelling out "Welcome Class of 2003" above a photo backdrop. People were snapping selfies, laughing. In the center was a tribute board. Where are they now? It listed names and titles. Ethan Delaney, cardiothoracic surgeon. Chloe Foster, deputy director at the DOJ. Jason Hill, real estate developer of the year. Veronica Blake, legal analyst and author. I read every name. Mine wasn't there. Not even a mention. I wasn't shocked. Veronica probably had a hand in putting the whole thing together. I stepped back before anyone could notice me lingering. A guy in a tan blazer brushed past, carrying 2 champagne glasses. "Sorry, miss. Staff entrance is that way, he said, pointing behind me without a glance. I blinked. I'm not staff, I said. He gave a half-second look, chuckled awkwardly, and muttered, "Oh, my bad," before walking off without another word. I wasn't angry. Not really. I'd gotten used to it. Being the woman folks overlook, the quiet one in the corner, the name they skip during toasts, the face they blur out of memories. But what nobody in that ballroom could have guessed, what they couldn't even dream up, was that I didn't come here for their approval. I wasn't here to make a fuss. I came to see if I could walk into a room full of people who'd written me off and still hold my head high. For now, that meant letting them think I was nobody. Just for a little while longer, I drifted through the ballroom like a shadow, half there, half forgotten. The place was dazzling, but in that showy, look-at-me way, chandeliers sparkling like they were trying too hard. Ivory tablecloths pressed to perfection, gold-rimmed plates lined up like they were ready for a royal dinner. The air carried the scent of fancy perfume and polished silver, the kind of smell that screams money and status. Laughter floated around in little clumps. Folks gathered around centerpieces bigger than wedding bouquets, clinking glasses and spinning tales of ordinary promotions like they'd just climbed a mountain. I scanned the room for the seating chart and spotted it up front. A big whiteboard with names in bold, fancy calligraphy, all sorted by table. Table 1 had the big shots. Dr. Ethan Delaney, Veronica Blake, Jason Hill, Chloe Foster. The golden names, the ones plastered all over yearbooks, debate trophies, and prom crowns. I kept looking, scrolling down the list. Table 7, Table 10, Table 12. Then there it was. Table 14. My name, Madison Blake, scribbled in smaller font, no bold, no title, no nothing. Just tossed in like an afterthought. I wove through the sea of linen and laughter to find Table 14, tucked way in the back, practically hugging the buffet line and so close to the swinging kitchen doors I could hear the clatter of pots. It was half hidden in the shadows. 5 chairs, 3 taken. One guy I didn't know was glued to his phone. A woman was chomping gum, studying the menu like it held the secrets of the universe. The third seat had a jacket slung over it, but no one was there. The centerpiece? Gone. Just a faint ring on the tablecloth to prove it ever existed. A plate with 2 half-eaten shrimp cocktails sat in the middle, napkins crumpled beside it. I sat down quietly, smoothing my skirt. Nobody looked up. I wasn't surprised. From where I sat, the stage was a blurry haze. The slideshow up on the screen felt like someone else's life flashing by. Veronica giving a speech at Harvard, Chloe shaking hands at the Capitol, Jason cutting a ribbon at some big real estate shindig. Their lives played in full color, over and over, center stage. Me? I didn't show up once. Not even a glimpse in the background. A waiter swung by with a tray of sparkling water and champagne. He handed flutes to the folks at Table 13, where they had fresh flowers, crisp menus, and actual ice buckets for their wine. When he got to us, he stopped, frowned, and said, "Oh, sorry. I think we're out of glassware for this section. I'll check." He didn't come back. So there I was, sipping lukewarm water from a plastic cup while the rest of the room glittered. For a moment, I wondered if this was on purpose. Veronica's name was all over this event. On the committee banner, her smile plastered on every program booklet. A photo on the welcome table labeled Veronica Blake, our class's rising star. Did she stick me here at Table 14? Out of sight, out of mind? Or worse, did nobody care enough to notice where I ended up? A guy from Table 6 leaned over, waving to someone behind me. He caught my eye, gave an awkward smile, and said, "Hey, is this the overflow table?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He shrugged. "You know, for spouses or late sign-ups." "I didn't mean—" I cut him off, voice flat. "I'm an alum." His face went red. "Right, sorry." He scurried off without another word. I glanced down at my name tag. Madison Blake. No rank, no division, no trace of who I'd become. Just a plain sticker on a plain dress at the plainest table in the room. I wasn't mad. Not really. Not yet. It was more like a quiet ache, like pressing on an old bruise just to feel it sting. I sat there, the echoes of who I used to be swirling in my head. First chair cello, debate team finalist, aced every AP class, early acceptance to Harvard that I turned down. And now? Now I was the woman by the kitchen doors. No flowers, no spotlight, just the faint clink of someone else's applause in the distance. I hadn't been at table 14 long when I heard that voice, one I could have picked out of a crowd after all these years. Madison? Is that really you? It was Jason Hill, striding over with that same old swagger. He looked like the years had been kind. Same height, same chiseled jaw, same calculated smile that could charm a room. But his eyes? Those were exactly the same. Sharp and showy, like he was always playing to win, even when he was playing nice. Trailing him were Caitlin Mays, former cheer captain with her perfect blonde curls, and Ben Ramirez, the guy who flunked English 3 times, but now apparently ran some hotshot startup. Their name tags gleamed with gold embossing screaming importance. Jason leaned in, just close enough to make it feel like he was sizing me up. Wow, he drawled, eyes scanning me head to toe. Didn't expect to see you here. I gave a small nod. Good to see you too, Jason. He let out a half laugh, like I'd said something quaint. Still so formal. Man, you were always the most serious person in class. So, where have you been? I heard something about Harvard, right? What happened there? I smiled, keeping it light. Plans changed. He raised an eyebrow like he was waiting for the punchline. Yeah? I heard you joined the army or something. Like, logistics? What was it again? Before I could answer, Caitlin tilted her head, jumping in. Weren't you the one who vanished sophomore year? Someone said you just up and left. Jason grinned like he'd cracked some code. Oh yeah, you pulled a Houdini on us. Left the whole Ivy League crowd in shock. Pre-law, honors, scholarship girl. Then, poof. He waved his hand, mimicking smoke disappearing. Ben chuckled. Didn't she drop out or something? Became a chef? Or maybe a translator? Wait, was it teaching? Caitlin chimed in. I'm pretty sure it was supply chain. Or maybe admin? I just sat there, letting them toss guesses like they were playing a game. That was their way. Never asking to learn, only to feel bigger. Jason took a sip of his red wine, holding the glass like it was part of his act. So come on, what are you doing these days? Someone behind them muttered. She probably can't say. You know, government secrets or whatever. They all burst out laughing, like it was the cleverest thing they'd heard all night. And right then, something in me went still. Not out of hurt, but clarity. These were the same folks who used to borrow my notes, beg me to edit their essays, lean on me to carry group projects and win debate rounds. Now they didn't even know what I did, but they were happy to look down their noses at me. I could have said it. I could have dropped it like a bomb. Lieutenant General, U.S. Army, 3 overseas commands, active Pentagon clearance. Ever heard of Operation Meridian? But I didn't. I just smiled, calm and steady, the way I've learned to in strategy meetings, mission briefings, war rooms where silence can cut deeper than words. Jason smirked. Still keeping secrets, huh? Classic Maddie. He turned to Caitlin. She always had that mysterious vibe. I used to think she was hiding a secret boyfriend or something. Caitlin snickered. More likely a cat. They laughed again, and I glanced at my plastic cup. Still no ice, still no refill. Jason raised his glass like he was toasting himself. Well, glad you showed up. It's good to have someone keep us grounded, you know, for old time's sake. I met his gaze unflinching. You're right, I said softly. Some things never change. For a split second, he blinked like something in my tone got under his skin. But just as quick, he shrugged it off. Anyway, he said, stepping back, come say hi to the crew later. We're planning a selfie at the power table. You'll want in. Caitlin giggled as they sauntered off. Power table. I glanced toward the front where Veronica sat at table 1, glowing in a red dress, basking in a circle of admiration. I could imagine what they all thought of her. The successful one, the polished one, the Blake who made the family proud. They had no clue that the woman they'd brushed off tonight, me, had outranked her in every way that mattered, just not in the ways they bothered to see. The lights dimmed just as I took the last sip of my lukewarm water. No one ever brought that refill. A soft voice crackled over the speakers, gentle but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program's about to start." Chairs scraped, glasses clinked, and the room's chatter hushed, not into silence, but that eager quiet before a show begins. I settled back at table 14, tucked in the shadows by the kitchen doors, and watched as the mood shifted from casual to choreographed. Up front, a man in a crisp navy suit grabbed the microphone. The MC, I guessed, though I didn't catch his name. His voice was smooth, polished, with just enough honey to sound like he meant every word. He welcomed us to the 20-year reunion of Rosewood High's class of 2003, thanked the sponsors, tossed out a few jokes that got polite chuckles at best. Then his smile stretched wide, and you could feel the room lean in. "And now," he said, "it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, the recipient of this year's Distinguished Legacy Award." He paused, letting the moment build. Deputy Director of the Department of Justice's Cyber Oversight Division, Veronica Blake. The applause roared, almost too loud, like they were trying to prove something. I stayed seated, my hands still in my lap. Veronica glided onto the stage like it was her birthright, her scarlet dress catching the light, her hair falling in perfect waves. Every step was deliberate, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this moment her whole life. The crowd ate it up. Of course they did. She stood behind the podium, waiting for the room to settle, then flashed a smile that could have won an election. "Wow," she started, her voice warm, confident, inviting. "It's surreal to be here tonight. 20 years ago, I was sitting right over there." She pointed to a corner near the back. "Dreaming of getting out of this town. Never thought I'd be back, except maybe to show you I made it." The room laughed, clapped, hung on her every word. She paused, letting it sink in. "I've spent the last 15 years in Washington," she went on. "Started as an intern, clawed my way up, and this year I was named Deputy Director for Western Cyber Oversight at the DOJ. More applause, camera flashes popping like fireflies. She nodded, all grace and humility. "But don't worry. I still remember waiting for dial-up in the school library. Some things stick with you forever." That got another laugh, louder this time. I watched her, not just her words, but the way she moved. Every pause timed, every smile a tool. She wasn't just talking. She was putting on a performance, and she was good. Then her tone softened, and I felt the shift coming. "Of course," she said, "no journey's ever solo. I've had mentors, colleagues, friends, and family." She paused again, and a few heads turned my way. I could feel their eyes, that subtle weight of attention. "I want to thank my sister," she said, her smile unwavering. "Who's here tonight?" I stiffened, my fingers tightening around the empty plastic cup. She's always been uniquely herself. Quiet, determined, mysterious. A soft chuckle slipped from her lips. "We've taken very different paths, but she's proof there's more than one way to contribute." The crowd gave a half-hearted laugh, unsure if it was a compliment or a jab. I didn't move, didn't blink. That was Veronica's gift, turning kindness into a blade, so sharp you barely felt it cut. She shifted the spotlight back to herself, smooth as ever. "I've been fortunate," she said, "but I never forget where it started. Right here, Rosewood High." The applause roared again, louder than before. I didn't join in. I sat still because I saw that moment for what it was. A public flex, a way to remind everyone who stood where, who got to shine. It wasn't gratitude. It was a line in the sand. Veronica stepped off the stage and floated back to table 1, where Jason stood to pull out her chair like she was royalty. Across the room, her eyes caught mine and she smiled. Not warm, not kind, but calculated. She mouthed something, too quick to catch fully, but I knew what it said. Stay in your corner. The MC took the mic again, all cheer. And now dinner will be served. After, we'll open the floor for group photos and open mic memories, so get ready to share your best stories. I looked down at my empty plate. The table still bare, no centerpiece, no recognition. And now, a public dismissal dressed up as thanks. Veronica had wielded that stage like a weapon, and I was the mark, even if no one else saw the hit. But I felt it. And I was done letting it draw blood in silence. Dinner arrived, but it felt like part of the show. Waiters glided through the room like they'd rehearsed every step, setting down plates with a flourish. Stuffed chicken, fancy heirloom carrots, and some kind of sauce that probably cost more than my shoes. It looked beautiful, but when I took a bite, it tasted like nothing. My appetite was long gone, swallowed up by the weight of the night. All around me, the room buzzed with life. Conversations bloomed like those over-the-top centerpieces, laughter spilling from every table except mine. Glasses clinked in toasts. Old jokes got dragged out for another round, and someone behind me was yammering about their science fair volcano catching fire back in the day. Across the room, a couple of women were snapping selfies by a giant class photo board, giggling like they were back in high school. And me? I sat alone at table 14, my name tag slipping off one magnet, dangling like it was ready to give up. Nobody came over to fix it. Nobody came over at all. I picked up my fork just to give my hands something to do. My mind wasn't on the food. It was spinning, circling like a storm. Had I been wrong to come here? These people, this place, they didn't remember who I'd been. Or maybe they did. And they chose to forget. Maybe it was easier to wipe me out than to admit they'd misjudged me all those years ago. But it didn't matter anymore. I slid back into my seat at table 14, calm as ever. I folded my coat over the chair, smoothed my skirt, and set my phone face down on the table. The countdown was on. The MC grabbed the mic again, all smiles. We're almost at the end of the program, he said. After this final group photo, we invite everyone to stay for dancing and... He stopped mid-sentence. The windows started to rattle. A low hum, soft at first, grew louder, deeper, vibrating through the room. Someone muttered, "Is that thunder?" Then lights pierced the ceiling, sharp beams slicing through the tall glass panels. Outside, a black silhouette loomed over the manicured lawn. Sleek, matte, unmistakably military. Murmurs spread like wildfire. People stood, craning their necks, some drifting toward the windows. What the hell? Is that a helicopter? I knew exactly what it was. I rose slowly, grabbed my coat, and walked toward the double doors leading to the courtyard. Behind me, chairs scraped, voices buzzed, confusion rippling through the crowd. As the helicopter descended, its rotor wash shaking the trees and flapping the tablecloths outside, a uniformed officer stepped out. He moved with purpose, parting the crowd like water. When he reached the doorway, he didn't pause. He snapped a sharp salute and said, loud and clear, "Lieutenant General Blake, ma'am, the Pentagon needs you." The room went dead silent, like someone had pulled a curtain over the noise. I turned, not with a flourish, just enough to meet their eyes. Every single one. Veronica stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. Jason blinked, his face a mix of shock and confusion. The MC looked like he might keel over. I gave the officer a nod and walked toward him. No words needed. No speech, no explanations. Let them talk later. Right now, this moment was mine. I didn't rush. Each step toward the officer felt like turning the final page of a long, heavy book. Every sidelong glance, every whispered jab, every moment I'd been brushed aside. It all dissolved under the weight of what filled the air now. Power. Not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind that makes a room go still. The officer reached for my coat, but I shook my head and draped it over my arm. I wanted them to see me exactly as I was. Whole, calm, in command. I glanced back at the crowd, just for a moment. They were frozen, like someone had paused a film mid-scene. Champagne glasses hovered midair, forks dangled, eyes wide, mouths open but silent. Jason stood half a step back, his hand on Veronica's shoulder, like he needed something solid to hold on to. And Veronica? Her polished perfection cracked, her jaw tight, her brows furrowed, not curious but rattled. This wasn't her script. This wasn't how their night was supposed to end. Murmurs started rippling through the crowd. Lieutenant General? Wait, is that her? No way, that's Madison? She's in the military? Did he say Pentagon? Their voices carried years of assumptions, crumbling in real time. That slideshow looping behind them, prom queens, homecoming games, cheer routines, suddenly looked so small, so trivial. Their story wasn't the real one. The real one was right here, walking past them, and they hadn't read a single page of it. I could see it happening, their minds scrambling to make sense of me, trying to fit me into the box they'd built back in high school. To them, Madison Blake was the quiet girl, the plain one, the maybe she'll teach type. Not this, not a lieutenant general summoned mid-reunion by a black ops chopper. They didn't have a frame for it, not in their memories or their neatly curated nostalgia. At the edge of the courtyard, the MC, bless his heart, stumbled forward, clutching the mic like a lifeline. Madison, do you want to say something to the class? Before you know? I stopped, turned just enough to face them. Every eye locked onto me. I didn't need a microphone. My voice carried, clear and steady. No, I said. I've already said enough. And I had. Not with speeches or grand gestures, but with presence, with silence, with every choice that led to this moment. I climbed aboard the helicopter, the rotor wash tearing across the lawn, sending tablecloths flying and hair whipping. One last gust, like a final exclamation point. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That image, me, walking away, would stay with them forever. The woman they laughed at. The woman they forgot. Now the woman they'd talk about for years. Not because I wanted revenge. Because the truth doesn't need to yell. It just needs to show up. The second those aircraft doors slammed shut, the reunion's noise vanished, like someone flipped a switch. I was back where I belonged. A world that didn't give a damn about prom queens or class presidents. A world where your worth came from the choices you made when the stakes were high, not from how loud you laughed in high school. Inside the chopper, the engine's hum settled into a steady pulse, like a heartbeat. The officer across from me gave a small nod. "Ma'am, you handled that with more grace than I ever could," he said. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked out the window. Below, the courtyard shrank smaller by the second, the reunion's twinkling lights and fancy decorations fading into something small, like a play after the curtain drops, all their laughter and clinking glasses just props in a scene that didn't matter anymore. I took a deep breath. It wasn't pride swelling in my chest. It was clarity. For years, I'd carried the quiet weight of being invisible. I let them erase me from their story because I thought it didn't matter. I had battles to fight, missions to lead, lives to save. High school reunions weren't even a blip on my radar. But tonight wasn't about digging up the past. It was about claiming it. It was about showing them what I'd become. Not to shove it in their faces, but to remind myself I'd always been more than the shadow they cast me in. And maybe, just maybe, it was about that one girl in the back of the room, still hiding, still overlooked. Maybe she saw me tonight. Maybe she realized she didn't have to stay unseen. A memory flickered, one I hadn't touched in years. Sophomore year, I'd poured my heart into a science project, a working weather simulation module built over 3 sleepless nights. At the school fair, the judges walked right past my table to gush over Veronica's sparkly recycling poster. I went home that day and cried. Tonight, I didn't cry. I stood tall. I climbed into that damn helicopter. And the same people who'd once brushed me off, they stood, every last one of them, frozen in place. I don't know if they clapped. I don't care. I didn't need their applause. I just needed that door to close behind me and the world to know I'm not that girl anymore. I'm Madison Blake, Lieutenant General, United States Army, and I don't wait to be seen. If you thought that reunion was a show, let me tell you, it's nothing compared to where this story really starts. I wasn't always the woman who could silence a room with a single step, the one who climbed into a helicopter without looking back. There was a time when I doubted every move I made, when I was pushed into the shadows, not just by classmates, but by the people closest to me, even my own family. They didn't see me, didn't believe in what I could become. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the days when it all took root, when the fire that drives me now was just a spark fighting to stay lit. Every Christmas, I can still smell the cinnamon candles and baked ham, see the twinkling tree and hear the fireplace crackling while Mom hummed Bing Crosby, stirring her cranberry sauce. It looked like a perfect holiday postcard. But when I close my eyes, I'm back on the staircase, dressed neatly, clutching a gift I'd spent weeks choosing, waiting for someone to call me for the family photo, to offer me pie, to notice I was there. They never did. My brother Daniel was always the star, arm around our cousin Jake, both laughing like they owned the room. Mom beamed, bragging about his debate wins or college acceptance. I was just a shadow, perched on the couch's edge, out of their story. One Christmas, my sophomore year, I scraped together every penny, babysitting, skipping lunches to buy gifts. A wallet for Dad, a scarf for Mom, nail polish for my cousins. I was so proud, handing them out. But they just smiled, quick and polite, and moved on, not even unwrapping them in front of me. Daniel's last-minute keychains, though? They were treated like treasures. That night, I sat on the bathtub's edge, crumpled gift wrap in my hands, crying silent tears, realizing I was invisible. It wasn't just Christmas. My 18th birthday? I spent it alone. Daniel came home from college, so they threw him a dinner. Mom promised we'd celebrate this weekend, but it never happened. When Daniel turned 21, they rented a hall, invited every relative, and got a custom car-shaped cake. For me, an unsigned card slid under my door. School was no different. When I made varsity track, Mom said, "Don't hurt yourself." But Daniel's C+ in calculus was a bigger deal than my A in physics. His missed basketball shot was a family tragedy. My winning relay time, barely mentioned. The breaking point was my high school graduation. I was graduating with honors, wearing the white sash, chosen to carry the school flag. I sent invitations, set out chairs, hoped. But when I scanned the crowd, they weren't there. I waited an hour after, still in my cap and gown. Nothing. Later, a voicemail. "Mads, sorry. Daniel's flight landed early. We'll celebrate tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. Just leftover takeout and a note about the trash. That night, I wrote a letter to myself. You are not invisible. You are not disposable. You will make them remember your name. I didn't know how, but I knew I had to leave. Not to punish them, but to become someone who didn't need their applause to feel worthy. That summer, I enlisted in the Army. They didn't cry or argue, just nodded, like they thought I was never meant for more. They were so wrong. They didn't see the fire growing inside me, the kind that would carry me through years of proving myself, mission by mission. That fire wasn't just my strength. It was my weapon, and it was only the beginning. Week 4 of boot camp, my heart was pounding at mail call. Everyone rushed forward, tearing open letters, laughing, some crying over photos from home. I stood in line, imagining a note from Mom, or even Daniel, just a few words. "We're thinking of you." When the sergeant called my name, I stepped up, hopeful. He shook his head and moved on. I laughed it off. One missed mail day. No big deal. Weeks passed. Second, third, fifth, nothing. Bunks around me were covered with letters, photos, care packages stuffed with cookies. My wall stayed bare. I wrote postcards, sent emails, made a call when I could. No reply. One night, I lay in my uniform, boots still on, staring at the ceiling. Sophia, a girl from Alabama, got weekly cards from her grandma, scented with lavender. She let me smell one once, saying it helped with the distance. It hurt more than it helped. Every empty mailbox screamed I was forgotten. I stopped hoping. At mail call, I'd smile, act like I expected nothing. Parker, a quiet guy in my unit, saw through it. After another empty day, he slipped me a protein bar with a note. "You're not invisible. Just quiet strength. Don't let the silence lie." That stuck with me. The silence lied, whispering I didn't matter, that my family was ashamed, that I was an afterthought. One weekend, I went home unannounced. The house smelled like cinnamon, just like always. The mantel had new photos, Daniel with his fiancée, Mom and Dad with their dogs, cousins at game night. Not one of me. When I walked in, Mom jumped. "Madison, you should have called," she said. No hug, no warmth. We ate spaghetti, watched a movie. Dad fell asleep. No one asked about the army. In the morning, I saw unopened envelopes on the counter, one addressed to Daniel in Mom's handwriting. She knew how to write, just not to me. I left without a goodbye. Back on base, I poured myself into every mission, trained harder, ran farther. The less I heard from home, the more I became my own home. Their silence couldn't touch the strength I built. Still, I craved a nod, a sign someone saw me. Then came a letter, not from family, but from the Army. An invitation to train for Special Command, a path only 2 women had walked before. They doubted I'd make it. I wasn't about to let them be right. I had one more letter to write, not with words, but with every mission, every medal, every fight. A letter that would scream, "You should have never overlooked me." The dining room went dead silent when I said I was applying to officer candidate school. The clock ticked louder than our voices. Mom blinked at me like I'd said I was leaving for Mars. "Officer school?" she asked, all doubt. Dad coughed. "That's competitive, Madison." Daniel barely glanced up from his phone, smirking. "They don't take girls like you. Software quiet. You cried during Finding Nemo." My blood boiled, but I held back. I could have told him about sleeping in mud, marching miles with a heavy pack, handling weapons he'd only seen in games. But they didn't know that Madison, the Army Madison. To them, I was still the quiet girl they ignored, left out of family chats. Always there, but never counted. So I cleared my plate and walked out. That night, I stared at the OCS application. Essays, tests, letters, a mountain to climb. Then I remembered my graduation night promise. You are not invisible. You are not disposable. You will make them remember your name. I got to work. I trained before dawn, ran until my lungs burned, did pull-ups until my arms gave out. I studied leadership manuals during breaks, mailed paperwork weekly, pushed my fitness scores higher. The first rejection stung, but I framed it above my bed. The second time, I was waitlisted. The third, I got in. When I told Mom, she nodded, distracted. "That's nice. Will you make Daniel's engagement party?" No congratulations, just schedules. At OCS, I was the smallest, the only woman. Instructors didn't go easy. "Blake, you gonna cry or lead?" one barked. "Lead, sir," I shot back. Next day, they made me squad leader to test me. One guy, Sanders, mocked me, calling me Lieutenant Barbie. The squad laughed, so I memorized maps, planned every scenario, worked harder. By week 3, we aced every exercise, every inspection. Sanders stopped laughing. At graduation, they pinned my rank on. I scanned the crowd. No family. I wasn't shocked, but a letter came. Not from them, but from Parker. The guy from boot camp who saw me when no one else did. They didn't see you, but I did. You were never invisible. You were waiting to become undeniable. I carried that letter on every mission. Being underestimated wasn't a curse. It was a blade I learned to wield. From there came promotions, tough missions, medals they said I couldn't win. Every step, I saw that dining room. The silence, the smirk, the dismissal. I vowed they'd not just know my name. They'd stand when it was spoken. I'll never forget the weight of my first Service Excellence Medal, earned after a grueling year in the field. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, my name etched on it. My commander pinned it on in front of the division, and for the first time I felt seen, not as the quiet girl from Indiana or the overlooked sister, but as a leader. That weekend, I flew home, my first visit in over a year, wanting to share who I'd become. I walked through the door, and Mom glanced up from the table. "Oh, you're here," she said, flat. "You didn't call." I smiled. "Wanted to surprise you." Daniel eyed my uniform. "What's with the medal?" I showed them the medal, gleaming in the kitchen light. "Got this for leading a high-risk extraction, 0 casualties." Silence. Then Mom asked, "Is that like a participation award?" My heart sank. "No, it's a commendation from the Army." Daniel snorted. "They hand those out for showing up?" I met his gaze. Number they don't. Mom set the medal down like it was nothing. "Daniel's regional sales director now? Isn't that great?" I was stunned. I'd faced death, led soldiers through fire, trained officers, earned a medal signed by the Secretary of Defense. But it didn't matter. The walls held photos of Daniel. His conference, his fiancée, his retreat. None of me. At dinner, Daniel talked sales and bonuses. I stayed quiet. Dad asked, "You done with this Army thing soon?" I set my fork down. "No, Dad. I'm promoted, leading a command unit." Mom frowned. "But don't you want to settle down?" Daniel added, "You've had your fun. Be practical." My hands shook. Practical? They thought war zones were a phase. I wanted to scream, but said, "I'm going to bed. Big flight tomorrow." Nobody stopped me. In the guest room, the medal gleamed on the nightstand, but I felt ashamed. Not of it, but of hoping they'd care. They didn't see me. I was wrong to expect it. Next morning, Daniel leaned in the doorway. "A uniform doesn't make you better than us." I zipped my bag. "I never said it did." He shrugged. "Medals don't mean much in the real world." I tucked the medal away and walked out. Mom called, "Say hi to your colonel." I didn't look back. In the cold morning air, I whispered, "One day they'll wish they'd stood beside me." That was the last time I brought a medal home. Every achievement stayed with me, pinned to my uniform, etched in records, carried in silence. Home shrank me, so I built a new one, where I defined my worth. Walking into the reunion hall felt like stepping into a memory that didn't quite include me. Chandeliers cast a warm glow. 2000s pop tunes played softly, and red and gold balloons dotted the room. Framed photos of our teenage selves lined the walls. Prom poses, football games, yearbook quotes. I spotted myself in one. Frizzy curls, oversized hoodie, blurry in the background, already forgettable. At the check-in table, the woman barely looked up. "Name?" I smiled. "Madison Blake." She squinted at her list. "Oh, didn't recognize you." She handed me a cheap name tag. "Hello, my name is Madison." I pressed it onto my jacket, hoping someone might notice. But the room buzzed with laughter, old jokes, and reunions. Nobody turned my way. No hugs, no grins. I was a ghost. I grabbed a water glass and drifted to the room's edge. Olivia, the ex-cheerleader, spun tales of Santorini to a rapt crowd. Brian, the old football star, bragged about his kids and real estate firm. I waited for a glance, a nod. Nothing. At the yearbook display, people laughed over old photos, bad hair, and drama class disasters. Nobody said, Remember Madison? I was erased. I sat at a small table in the back, alone. My name tag read just Madison. No rank, no hint of the life I'd built. Conversations swirled. Jobs, marriages, vacations. But no one asked, what's Madison been up to? Would I have told them about commanding troops in war zones, briefing presidents, holding classified documents? Number in that hall, I was still the quiet girl from the yearbook, too plain to remember. Then a woman with red lipstick waved me over like I was staff. Miss, more napkins? We spilled wine. I blinked, stunned. I'm not event staff. She laughed it off. Oh, sorry. I thought you were helping out. Helping out. Right. Then Todd, a guy from school, spotted my name tag. Madison Blake, you dated Brian, right? I shook my head. Never dated Brian. He chuckled. Sure. Thought you were his quiet, artsy girlfriend. Or someone's ex-wife. I forced a smile. Nope. Another group passed, giving me pitying half smiles. If they didn't know me, I wasn't worth knowing. I sat back down, staring into my water glass. The old hurt was gone, replaced by clarity. I wasn't here to prove myself to people who never saw me. I was here to stand in their world one last time, to face those who'd shaped my silence and know they had no power over me anymore. I settled at a corner table, tucked behind a tacky centerpiece of fake orchids and balloons. The chandeliers glowed softly, 2000s pop tunes hummed, but I felt like an outsider watching a play. A group sat nearby. 3 women, 2 men, their laughter loud, loosened by wine. One woman leaned in, her voice low but clear. Did you see that lady by the door? No makeup flats, like she walked out of the DMV. They stifled giggles like school kids. A guy added, thought she was an assistant or the venue manager. Out of place. Another woman said, I heard she went here. Madison Blake, maybe? I froze but didn't flinch. They didn't know I was right there, hearing every jab, every snicker. Their words confirmed it. I didn't belong in their world. Not then. Not now. Is she married? One whispered. Doubt it. Another replied. Career woman vibe. Lives alone, cats, microwave dinners. I pressed my palm to the table, steadying myself. Once, those words would have broken me, sent me running to question why I wasn't enough. But tonight, I felt a quiet power, unshakable. My name badge read, just Madison. No rank, no title. Let them laugh. They didn't know I'd piloted planes they couldn't name, briefed embassy teams while they posted selfies, or that soldiers saluted me in formation. To them, I was invisible. But not to the world I'd built, and not to myself. As they gossiped about divorces and Botox, I leaned back, a small smile forming. They were stuck in their glory days, but I knew the real story of this reunion was about to begin. I was poking at a dry slice of cheesecake when Olivia Reynolds strolled over to my corner table. Back in high school, she was student body president, debate star, most likely to become a senator. Still polished, her heels clicked with purpose. Her designer clutch screamed wealth. Madison, she said, voice sugary like a networking pitch. It's been ages. I almost didn't recognize you. I nodded. Hi, Olivia. Her smile gleamed, but her eyes scanned my plain blouse, my lone water glass. I was telling Sarah how great it is to see everyone, she said. Life takes us different ways, right? I braced for it, the jab wrapped in kindness. So, what are you doing these days? I paused. Still in public service, I said simply. Oh, that's wonderful, she replied, too quick, not listening. You always had a kind heart, not the corporate type, right? I stayed silent. She didn't need my words. Well, she added, patting my shoulder, whatever you're doing, I hope you find a path that suits you. It's never too late. There it was, her pitying pat, like I was lost, waiting for her to hand me a map. She glided off to a table of lawyers and moguls, leaving me with my cheesecake. Did she think I was drifting? Stuck in high school insecurities? I checked my phone. An unread email. Security briefing. CENTCOM Logistics. Lieutenant General Blake. I closed it. I didn't need to prove anything to her. But her words stung, echoing every family dinner where my deployments went unasked, every holiday card to Maddie like I was still a kid, every moment I was unseen. They all wanted me to find my way, back to their world. I pushed the plate away, stood and smoothed my blouse. My steps were steady as I headed for the exit. The night wasn't over. Soon they'd be the ones lost for words. I stepped outside to breathe, the ballroom's weight pressing too hard. Not from the chandeliers or stale high school jokes, but the sting of being unseen. Leaning against a cold stone pillar by the parking lot, I let the night air steady me. The grass field glowed under moonlight, dotted with sagging balloons and empty chairs. Inside, a slow prom song played, pulling everyone back to their teenage dreams. My phone buzzed. An urgent pulse, not a friend's call, but protocol. The screen read, "Unknown number, encrypted line." I answered, voice calm. Lieutenant General Blake speaking. A steady voice replied, "Ma'am, ETA 12 minutes. Fort Claremont situation escalating. Secretary requests immediate briefing." I turned from the ballroom. "Landing site?" "Your GPS coordinates, ma'am. Blackhawk confirmed." "Maintain radio silence until touchdown." "Yes, ma'am." Call ended. My reflection in the dark screen showed a plain blouse, simple bun, no medals, no uniform. Just Madison. But I was command. Through the glass doors, I saw them dancing, laughing, lost in nostalgia, blind to the shift brewing out here. Power was coming, quiet and unstoppable. I tapped codes into a secure app, messaging Captain Alara Jones. En route to site. Clear south perimeter for landing. Notify Protocol Unit Bravo. Her reply pinged. "Roger, in position. See you on the ground, ma'am." I tucked my phone into my clutch, picturing their faces. Olivia's pity turning to shock when the Blackhawk arrived for the directionless girl. They wouldn't grasp the codes or urgency, but they'd see. Everything would change. A faint rumble stirred the sky. Not yet sound, but a vibration. They were close. The world was about to meet a power that didn't beg for a seat at the table. The champagne flutes trembled on the tables, catching the chandelier light. At first, folks blamed the speaker's bass or a passing truck. Then came the unmistakable thump-thump-thump of rotor blades slicing the night. Conversations fizzled. Heads turned to the skylight. The music cut off. Nostalgia turned to confusion. Someone gasped outside. A Blackhawk helicopter emerged through the clouds, its coated lights flashing, sleek and serious. Inside, murmurs grew. "Military? What's happening? Part of the reunion?" I stepped back in from the night air, calm, silent. I didn't need to speak. The doors burst open and a uniformed officer in combat gear strode through, parting the crowd with purpose. Every eye followed as he marched straight to me, snapping a sharp salute. "Lieutenant General Madison Blake," he said, voice ringing. "Ma'am, we need you immediately." Silence swallowed the room. Drinks untouched, forks frozen. Phones lifted, unsure if this was real. A whisper broke through. "Lieutenant General?" Another. "Blake?" Shock spread as their assumptions crumbled. The woman they'd mocked, ignored at her corner table, was a high-ranking Army officer, a general. Olivia's jaw dropped, her polish gone. Mr. Kensington fumbled his wine. Dylan, who'd said I'd never be a leader, stepped back, pale. I nodded to the officer. "Tell the crew I'll be there in 3 minutes." "Yes, ma'am," he said, saluting before exiting. Guests trailed him, eager to see the Blackhawk. The room felt the weight. They hadn't just underestimated me, they'd erased me. Now they saw who I'd become. I walked past stunned faces, my steps steady. No one stopped me. They knew now. Not just my name, but the woman they'd never bothered to see. I stood frozen for a moment in that glittering ballroom, surrounded by faces that once laughed behind my back, branding me the quiet girl, the dropout. the nobody. For years, I let them write that story. But there I was, not chasing their approval. Destiny spoke louder, roaring through helicopter blades and the weight of my rank. I turned slowly, my gaze steady. No anger, just clarity. Some looked away, ashamed. Others avoided my eyes. A few sat stiff, maybe angry their world wasn't the center anymore. Then Mr. Henry Lopez, our old science teacher who urged us to dream big, stood. He straightened his tie, hand on heart. "It's an honor, General Blake," he said, voice clear across the hall. A hush fell, not heavy, but reverent. One by one, people rose. The women who mocked my dress, the men who thought I was a +1, even Principal Carter, who'd told me to aim low, now looked like he wanted a do-over. I didn't gloat. I met their eyes, letting silence speak louder than words. I walked toward the exit, through doors I'd entered hours ago with just a name tag and unseen scars. Now, I carried a title they'd never forget. Lieutenant General Madison Blake. Outside, footsteps followed. Not chasing, just watching, needing a glimpse of strength and redemption. At the landing zone, the Blackhawk's wind whipped my dress. The officer nodded. "Ready, ma'am?" I glanced back, not to boast, but to lock in the moment. The girl they ignored was the woman they stood for. The helicopter's roar was my armor. Climbing aboard, the wind pushed me forward, like the world was finally lifting me up. The door shut with a thud, the hum inside like home. I sank into my seat, clipped my harness, and exhaled. Not from exhaustion, but release. Out the window, reunion lights faded to specks. I dreamed of storming that room, unloading years of hurt, their assumptions, mockery, erasure from their yearbooks and lives. But I didn't need words. Success speaks in silence, and mine was louder than their 20 years of noise. The headset crackled. "Ma'am, Fort Claremont is secure. Team Alpha rendezvous on site. ETA, 22 minutes. "Copy that," I said, voice steady. I pulled out my leather notebook, filled with mission notes, but flipped to a page I'd kept for years. Be the storm they never saw coming. Written the night someone said I wasn't leadership material. Too quiet. I wasn't loud, but I was undeniable. I leaned back, the engine's hum in my bones. Memories flashed. Alone at lunch, Olivia crowned most likely to succeed while I was invisible. Dylan saying I'd never make it. They didn't see a rock. Sleepless months. Orders deciding life or death. The weight of responsibility. I'd paid their doubts in full. Now, I was proof they couldn't ignore. The stars shone bright outside. They couldn't see them from their tables, but I could. At 2,000 feet, everything was clearer. Above the noise, you don't need to prove anything. You just are. I smiled, not for showing them up, but because I never needed to. They just needed to see me. And now they had. I'd just wrapped a tactical briefing and returned to base when a junior officer approached, holding a note. "Ma'am, there's a civilian at the gate requesting to see you. Her name is Olivia Hastings." My heart paused, just for a moment. Olivia? The name hadn't crossed my mind in 20 years, but it still rang like a distant bell, sharp and unyielding. High school queen bee, the one who'd sneered at my scuffed shoes, whispered I was government trash and thrift store clothes, and said, even if she came back rich and famous, she'd still be a loser. And now she was here, at my base, outside my gate. I granted her access. Not out of forgiveness, but because I wanted to see her face when she saw me. The room was quiet when she walked in, her heels clicking on the concrete, her blouse crisp, makeup flawless. But her posture betrayed her. Less poised, less certain than the Olivia of prom night. "Madison," she said softly, like she was holding glass in her throat. "It's Lieutenant General Blake," I corrected, my voice steady, eyes locked on hers. "That's how we do things here." Her face flushed, and she nodded quickly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." I stayed silent, letting her words hang. She rushed on. nervous, like she thought I'd cut her off. I was young and stupid. Back then, I thought pushing people like you down was how I stayed on top. I never thought I never imagined. She faltered, her breath catching. I crossed my arms. I didn't come to the reunion for an apology, Olivia. I came to remind myself how far I've come, without any of you. The silence thickened, heavy and uncomfortable. She shifted, forcing a brittle smile. I'm divorced now. Life didn't quite turn out the way people thought it would for me either. I raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. She let out a hollow laugh. I guess I just wanted to see you, talk to you, for a few minutes. You're talking now, I said, my voice flat. That was it. She stood there, awkward, then nodded and turned for the door. Thank you for not slamming it in my face, she murmured. I didn't reply, didn't move, didn't watch her go. The door clicked shut and I stayed still. Not angry, not triumphant, just still. It hit me then. Some apologies aren't for healing. They're confessions, wrapped in guilt, meant to ease the speaker, not the one who carried the scars. I opened the blinds and looked out over the parade grounds. A part of me had wanted Olivia to break down, to grovel, to feel even a sliver of the humiliation she'd once dished out. But she didn't. And that's when I realized the real power we hold over those who hurt us. We walk away untouched. They'll never know how much they lost by betting against us. A week after Olivia's visit, I returned from an intelligence briefing to find a sealed envelope on my desk. No official stamp, no sender's name, just Madison Blake typed in bold capitals. I stared at it, my gut telling me this wasn't routine. I opened it carefully, revealing a single sheet of thick, fancy stationery, the kind my mother used for holiday cards to impress distant relatives she didn't even like. I unfolded it slowly. Dear Madison, I saw the footage from the reunion. The helicopter, the uniform, the way everyone just froze. I've never been more stunned or proud. I owe you an apology, not just for the things I said, but for never believing in you. Dad and I were wrong. We were so focused on what we thought success looked like. We missed the woman you were becoming. I hope we're not too late to say we're sorry. My eyes narrowed. The letter went on. I also wanted to ask, I recently left my job. Things haven't been going well since the merger. I know you're in a powerful position now, and if there's any opportunity to collaborate, even informally, I'd be open to it. There it was. The apology was just the opening act. The real play was the pitch. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a sharp breath, half laugh, half scoff. Dylan, my golden boy cousin, the family's supposed future senator, investment banker, the heir to all their hopes. The same guy who, at 17, looked me in the eye and said, girls like you don't go far, Mads. Not in this world. You're too intense, too rigid, too much everything. Apparently, I wasn't too much anymore. Now I was just enough to be his lifeline. I glanced at the photo on my shelf. My platoon in Afghanistan. Every one of them trusting me with their lives. And here was Dylan, who hadn't trusted me to pass high school algebra, asking for a favor. I flipped the letter over. No return address. Classic Dylan. Toss out a seed and wait for someone else to grow it. I grabbed a pen and a sheet of my own stationery. In steady script, I wrote 4 words. Request denied. Respectfully, M. I slipped it into a fresh envelope, no stamp, no address, and tucked it into the back of my drawer. Not out of spite, but as a reminder of boundaries, not bitterness. That night, I lit a candle and sat by my window. I thought about all the years I'd chased validation from people like Dylan, all the energy I'd poured into proving myself to those who didn't care. But now, they were the ones writing to me, chasing me. And it hit me. When you become the person they swore you'd never be, their apologies always come with a catch. They don't want forgiveness. They want access. It started with a call from a journalist at the Atlantic Post. Her voice cool and professional, almost too measured. General Blake, we're doing a profile series on underrecognized military leaders, and your name keeps coming up. We'd love to feature your story. I paused. The old me would have shut it down, kept my world locked tight. But I was done hiding. Let them see. Sure, I said. Come to the base, but be ready. I don't do fluff. 3 days later, she sat across from me in my office, recorder clicking on. Let's start with your childhood, she said. Your rise wasn't expected. I met her gaze. My family called me the footnote. I was never the star, never the favorite. My cousin Dylan got scholarships and speeches. I got silence, until the silence broke me, and I rebuilt myself. Her eyes widened. Can I quote you on that? Please do. She asked about my education, deployments, leadership under fire. Then came the real question. Why did no one in your family attend your promotion ceremony last year, even though it was televised nationally? I smiled, slow and steady. There it was. I reached into my drawer and slid her a copy of a letter my father wrote the week before that ceremony. It read, You've made your point, Madison, but don't expect us to clap for a daughter who abandoned tradition for uniformed rebellion. The journalist gasped. I leaned forward. They didn't see this as service. They saw it as betrayal. They couldn't imagine a woman in our family commanding anything beyond a kitchen or a boardroom. She sat back, stunned. The camera kept rolling. I didn't stop. I earned these stripes in sandstorms and blood, not by chasing approval, not by marrying into it, by surviving it. I let the words hang, heavy and final. When the interview dropped, it detonated. General Blake trended across platforms. Some cheered my candor, others called it disrespectful to air family laundry. I didn't care. In one moment, I'd done what no family dinner ever allowed. I spoke, loud, clear, unapologetic. That weekend, my phone lit up. 6 missed calls from my aunt, 2 emails from Dylan, a voicemail from my mother starting with, I can't believe you would... I didn't listen to the rest. When you finally speak your truth, you don't need permission to be heard. The days after the interview were quiet, a stillness I hadn't expected. No flood of media requests, no family ambushing me with calls or emails. Just silence. Not the kind that cuts, but the kind that soothes, like a wound finally closing. Then, one morning, as I prepped to brief my team for a NATO coordination exercise, a message came from base reception. There's someone here to see you. Says it's personal. I stepped out and saw him. My father. His hair was grayer, his crisp suit still projecting authority, but his posture was different. Not rigid, not proud, just weary. He stood when he saw me. Madison, he said, his voice thin, almost breaking. I wanted to come before it's too late. I didn't respond, just waited. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. Faded, a photo of me in uniform, smiling from the day I earned my first command post. I've carried this for years, he whispered. I just never knew how to say it. But I'm proud of you. The wall I'd built didn't collapse or shatter, but it cracked. We sat in the officers' lounge for an hour. He didn't beg for forgiveness or make excuses. He just admitted he was wrong. For the first time, that was enough. That night, I sat by the barracks window, staring at the same view that had held my doubts, grief, and anger over the years. Stars flickered above. I thought about what I'd lost, what I'd gained, and the versions of myself that had to fall away so I could become the woman they never expected. Would I reconcile? Maybe. On my time, my terms. But I'd learned something vital. Forgiveness isn't about letting them back in. It's about letting yourself move forward, without their weight, their noise, their permission. That was the most powerful command I'd ever given, not to an army, but to myself. Stand down. You're free now. A matte black envelope arrived, its golden crest glinting in the sun. The letterhead read, Department of Defense National Recognition Ceremony, honoring distinguished service and strategic leadership. In bold, keynote honoree, Lieutenant General Madison Blake. My hands, steady in combat and briefings, shook. This moment rattled me more than any war zone. The ceremony was set for a Saturday in D.C. at Eisenhower Military Hall, a rare stage. Only 5 women had been honored like this in 30 years. I'd be the 6th. My limousine rolled past flag-lined streets, news vans crowding the entrance. Officers in dress blues and civilians in gowns mingled with generals and senators. The air hummed with power. I stepped out in my dress uniform, medals gleaming from years of service. Cameras flashed. A reporter shouted, "Is your family here tonight?" I kept walking. Backstage, the protocol officer said, "Your guests are in front." The program listed Dylan, Olivia, Rachel, and Gregory, my brother, his wife, old classmates who'd mocked me, invited via alumni channels after my name hit headlines. Anger flared, but I let it go. Let them see. The auditorium packed with nearly 1,000, thousands more watching live. General Maxwell finished his remarks, then introduced me. A soldier, scholar, and woman who redefined strategic command, Lieutenant General Madison Blake. Applause roared. I walked out, lights blinding, and saw their faces. Dylan's jaw tight, Olivia clutching her bag, Gregory pale. At the podium, I paused, letting the room wait. "Good evening," I said. "I stand here not because I followed their path, but because I walked away from it." My speech poured out. Truth, not strategy. I spoke of doubts, my family's laughter, fighting wars at dinner tables and reunions, the silence of being unseen, and how winning meant pressing on. When I finished, the room stood, saluted, even those who'd mocked me. I didn't feel pride. I felt release. The applause echoed as I stepped off the stage, met by commanders, ministers, and attachés, their handshakes heavy with respect. Through the crowd, I saw Dylan approaching, silver at his temples, his smile forced. "Madison, that was incredible," he said cautiously. "I'm proud of you." I nodded curtly. "Thank you." He hesitated. "Look, I know we've had differences, but Olivia and I would love to have dinner. Just us." The man who'd mocked my medals and officer school dreams now wanted a piece of me. "I appreciate it," I said coolly, "but I have obligations." "You understand." I walked away before he could respond. Then Olivia glided over, diamonds glinting, champagne in hand. "Lieutenant General Blake," she said, testing the title. "Such an inspiring evening." Her hand touched my arm. "I run a podcast, Women Who Win. Your story could inspire our audience. Be a guest?" The woman who'd called me a lonely tomboy now wanted my story for her brand. I smiled faintly. "Thanks, Olivia, but I don't inspire people who belittled me." I left her standing, stunned. In the hall, I saw Gregory by a window, whiskey in hand, his eyes holding awe and regret. He didn't approach. Good. Silence spoke louder. Then Rachel came, quiet in a simple dress. "Madison, I owe you a real apology," she said softly. "In school, I laughed at the wrong jokes, followed the crowd because I was scared. You never did. You stood your ground. I see it now." Her words were honest, raw. I nodded. "Thank you, Rachel." No fanfare. Just truth and a touch of peace. Later, on a terrace overlooking DC's skyline, I could have gloated over their shock. But that wasn't me. I didn't climb this far to prove them wrong. I did it to refuse their limits. Under the stars, I let go of a ghost. I no longer needed their recognition. The world had already given it. The stage was pristine, framed by the American flag, flanked by banners from the Department of Defense, the U.S. Army, and NATO. The conference hall brimmed with a diverse crowd. Journalists, delegates, military brass, veterans, educators, students. Not just uniforms or politics, but the world itself, watching. And I, Madison Blake, stood as the keynote speaker. A soft spotlight found me as I stepped to the podium. For a moment, I said nothing, letting my gaze sweep over the sea of faces. Some curious, some awestruck, others poised to judge. Then I began. 22 years ago, I left my small town with a duffel bag and a dream no one understood. I didn't come from a military family. I had no legacy, no support. What I had was a fire. I paused, letting the words settle. A fire mocked, dismissed, underestimated. They saw my uniform and thought I was playing soldier. They saw my ambition and called it arrogance. They saw my silence and called it weakness. The room was still. I pressed on. But the battlefield doesn't care how pretty you look. It doesn't care about your high school superlatives or your social media following. It only asks, will you stand when everyone else falls? A few heads nodded, eyes locked on me. Throughout my career, I've led missions that saved lives and signed letters to families that broke my heart. I've been saluted and shouted at, decorated and doubted. I've walked into war zones where every step could have been my last. And I walked out because my team believed I'd bring them home. But nothing was harder than walking into a room of people who once laughed at me and choosing not to laugh back. The crowd stirred, a ripple of understanding. I leaned closer to the mic, my voice softer, more intimate. If you've ever been called too much, too quiet, too ambitious, too strange, know this. Your difference isn't a flaw. It's your edge. Your story might not be celebrated now, but one day it could be the spark someone else needs to keep going. And to those who tried to dim your light, don't waste energy proving them wrong. Just keep walking. And let your success blind them. Applause began to build, a low rumble growing louder. I finished, my voice steady. I am Lieutenant General Madison Blake. I was once the girl you overlooked. Today, I stand here because I never stopped believing that purpose beats popularity, and integrity is louder than approval. The room erupted. People stood, soldiers, civilians, students, even reporters brushing away tears. As I stepped back, a journalist called out, "General Blake, what would you say to your younger self if she were watching right now?" I turned, my answer immediate, unwavering. Don't shrink. You're going to need every inch of your power. The room fell silent again, my words sinking deep, leaving no space for doubt. The applause roared as I stepped off the stage, hands reaching out for shakes, some asking for photos, others offering nods. Half admiration, half apology. I didn't stop. I'd said what I needed to. My boots echoed on the marble floor of the reception hall, metals catching the chandelier's glow. It wasn't arrogance. It was closure. Outside, the night air was cool, the distant city hum a faint pulse. I paused by the fountain near the steps, catching sight of my old classmates through the glass doors, clustered in their circles, stealing glances my way, pretending they weren't looking. I let them wonder. I didn't wave. A sleek black car rolled up, the driver stepping out with a crisp salute. "Ma'am, your jet is ready." I nodded and slid into the back seat. No speeches, no glares, no theatrics. I wasn't leaving with anger. I was leaving with dignity. As the car pulled away, I glanced back, not at the building or the people, but at her, the girl I used to be. The one who cried in the prom bathroom stall, uninvited to birthday parties, mocked for her boots, her silence, her dreams. The girl who carried that pain but never turned it into hate. Under my breath, I whispered, "We made it." And with that, I let her go. The car glided through the city, streetlights flickering on the glass. Somewhere out there, a girl in a small town was being told she'd never amount to anything. Maybe one day she'd hear about me, about the reunion where they laughed until a helicopter landed and everything changed. As the screen dims and the music softens, I turn to the audience one last time. If you've ever been silenced, overlooked, or made to feel small, remember, your story isn't over. One day they'll have no choice but to listen. If my story moved you, drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you believe voices like mine deserve to be heard, support this channel. Like this video, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss the next story we tell. Because here at Hidden Family Revenge Stories, we don't just tell drama, we tell stories of dignity, betrayal, and rising stronger than ever. Thank you for being here. I'm Madison Blake. And this was my side of the truth.